We're back on the Fisher Cats pregame show, and we've got a very special guest today, Ian Unsworth, sitting down with the Blue Jays Director of Player Development, Joe Sclafani. Joe, thanks for taking the time.
Hey, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
So, what do you do? I think that's the first question anyone who is familiar with the Fisher Cats but might not know the Blue Jays on a larger front office scale would ask you.
Sure. Yeah. So, I've been fortunate to get this role. I fortunate enough to play for a little while, and wound up progressing once I transitioned over to this side. And I kind of head our department in terms of the staffing, putting together the staffing alignments at different places. Player plans are at the center of everything, right? Trying to maximize the potential of every single guy we get, figuring out how to unlock those things. Constant conversations with our coaches, check-ins on how the work's going. Should we adjust goals? Is it the appropriate time to challenge them? Like, you guys have had guys leave here, and you've had guys come from Vancouver. Trying to lead the charge on those fronts, and just trying to stay on top of guys every day. It's a long season. It's a grind. We had guys down at the complex in January, and we'll roll straight through for another 3+ weeks. So
it does not stop. Baseball is a year-round endeavor. But the Fisher Cats got some reinforcements at the trade deadline. Pieces like R.J. Schreck, Charles McAdoo have come to New Hampshire and made great impacts. So where does the player development staff come into play when it comes to a trade that sends away a big leaguer for a young promising prospect?
Yeah, so it's an exciting time for us. Obviously, due to unfortunate circumstances, obviously you'd want to be winning the big leagues, but I think our group tried to make the most of the situation that was handed to us. We were super excited about the guys that we got. My group in particular, from the deadline perspective, they'll kick us some names and ask us to watch some video and just it's another set of inputs, just from the group that's around it a little bit more often. We're very lucky. We have great people in the pro scouting department. I think we're going to talk about the draft as well, the amateur scouting department. But, they're a little bit removed from the day-to-day of it, whereas our group is there constantly thinking about how we can help these guys get better. So we kind of know the opportunities that we might have a little more consistent success with addressing, or those that, we haven't maybe been as successful. So just trying to provide those inputs and, taking all of those, Ross and the others up in the front office group, they try to factor those in to make those final decisions.
One thing that some people might not know is that the Blue Jays not only send scouts to college games, high school games to watch the amateurs, but also send scouts to other minor league games to watch other teams and other prospects. So maybe that's where you get some of that intel.
Yeah, that group is they're definitely the drivers of that process. The acquisition, acquisition is massively important. We do the best with every guy we have and try to unlock their potential and maximize it. But if there are limiting factors, it's a tough start. It's tough to start with, So we have a dedicated group that are thinking about that all the time. They have different assignments for different orgs. They cover them up and down. Some cover the lower levels, some cover the upper levels. There are conversations that happen throughout the year. It's not just during the deadline time. It's not just during free agency. So none of these. So we're prepared for any opportunities that may arise.
You mentioned the draft as well. What's the amateur scouting side of it? How do those guys bring the reports to you, and then you disseminate them down through the minor leagues? Yeah,
so it's definitely an area where it's been an area of focus where we're trying to really integrate better with the amateur group, and feel like we've made some progress there. Shane Farrell leads that group, Antonio LaCava, they do an outstanding job there. That group, it's an interesting world. Those guys are on the road all the time. They develop relationships with these kids for 3-4 years, sometimes even longer if they've known them in high school through college. So once we get them, we'll do meetings with the amateur scouting group. We put together profiles, basically to try to give our group a head start on getting to know who they are as people, how they tick, how they like to work, what are their routines, how they like to be coached, all of those different things. And even when we get them at that point, we tell them, like, you're here for a reason. There's a reason we selected you. So we're not gonna mess with you until we get to know you a little bit better. But from there, it's constantly like we might learn more about them in a month than those groups that have been with them for 3 or 4 years, just because we're with them every single day. And it's always a fun process. It's always a fun time of year. There's a ton of energy, and there's some novelty to it, right? you've been here all year. You kind of know what to expect with certain guys. Now all of a sudden you get a completely new group, and it's exciting to watch every day.
They're all down in the player development complex in Dunedin. I know that's where you spend most of your time. Joe Sclafani, the director of player development for the Blue Jays, is with us on the Fisher Cats pregame show. Even though you're down in Florida, I know you keep a close eye on the Fisher Cats. Who are some of New Hampshire's stars that have impressed you this year?
Yeah, it's been, not as great with the overall win-loss record. Always striving to be better there, but, our processes have been good. Feel good about that. The work is always great. Just hasn't really gone our way this year, but there's been some really encouraging performances. It's a challenging level. It's a big step up from high A. And even though we tell those guys that, it's always different when you actually get there and experience it. So, the Kasoviches of the world, the Rodens of the world that have already moved up to Buffalo and are having some success up there, learned valuable lessons here. They were exciting. Trent Wallace coming back and doing his thing has been pretty encouraging. Some of these new guys that, Ryan McCarty is a name that not everybody knew about, kind of an underdog story, but he's held his own really well. He's made some really positive developmental strides. Some of the new guys, McAdoo, everybody we get from the deadline, it's a very natural thing. You want to make a good first impression. You put a ton of pressure on yourself to make that good first impression, and you don't get necessarily the most genuine version of them. So now they're starting to settle in, and I know this group does an outstanding job, and they feel comfortable here, and they're really settling in. McAdoo has been really impressive with the way he's gone about his business. Obviously impacts the baseball really well. The at-bats are good. He can do some special things, but the defense at third base has been really encouraging. He's a big dude, but he moves surprisingly well. Minyango has been pretty interesting. We obviously identified him. The exit velocity is good. Some of the peripheral metrics are pretty good, but the at-bats have been great. It's loud, electric bat speed. There's some things that we're going to continue to work on there. Josh Rivera can really pick it. Had an unfortunate night last night, but we have a lot of confidence there. He got challenged with a high level outside of his first year. He just got drafted last year. First full season, Double A is challenging. I can go on and on, so you just cut me off whenever.
All right, well, let's focus on Joe Sclafani then, the person, because you know Manchester and New Hampshire pretty well, because in your college days, you started Dartmouth. What are your favorite memories that you had with the Big Green?
Yeah, best decision I ever made. I was a Florida kid in high school. They got me up on the most beautiful weekend possible for our recruiting visit.
They didn't mention the snow, huh?
No, it was like 70 degrees and sunny and not humid. And lo and behold, it snowed like 3 weeks later. But really fortunate. I got to be around some brilliant people and friends and connections that I've maintained throughout since I graduated. But we had a lot of success when I was there as a player. We were fortunate. Kyle Hendricks with the Cubs was in my draft class. Cole Sulcer has bounced around the big leagues. He was in my recruiting class. We had a lot of success there. Won a couple Ivy championships. Lost in Game 3 in the other couple of years. So I look back very, very fondly on being up here.
So you and Jake McGuigan have a battle of the brains whenever you guys meet up. That's Harvard against Dartmouth, folks.
Yeah, maybe not the battle of the brains, but ask him how he fared against Dartmouth on the field.
I certainly will. Did you play at Delta Dental Stadium at all when you were at college?
We never did. I drove by it a bunch because I used to fly into Manchester Airport. But I'd see the lights on and I always dreamed about it. When you have professional dreams. But never got to play here. But ironically enough, I'm here every year now.
Your professional dreams led you to the Astros system, where you made your way through the ranks, got a big league spring training opportunity. What did you learn when you spent time with that Houston organization? I've talked to a lot of guys. They say the business of baseball and sort of the professionality aspect is what they've gleaned over their first couple of years of minor league ball. What was it for you that really helped you develop as a person once you got to pro ball?
Interesting question. Yeah, I was very fortunate to be in that draft class. It was Jeff Lunau's first draft, Sig's first draft, Carlos Correa. Like our top 10 picks, I think 9 of them wound up being in the big leagues. It was pretty neat just to learn how different guys, high school, 4-year college, JUCO, juniors coming out. Like we had every demographic, but it was a lot of the way that everybody went about their work was slightly different, but all had the same goal, and we competed. I learned a ton from those guys. I joke with our guys, you're going to learn more from your teammates than you will from us, and that's not a shot. Like, we're going to do the best we can and give you everything you need. But just those conversations were so advanced. I learned to think about things in a different way. I was right after I finished was probably when the tech and data boom really came in. I think the Astros had it at that point, but we didn't really get a ton of exposure to it. But really was fortunate to have great teammates, great coaches, and just learn how to play the game the right way.
Well, Joe, we really appreciate your insight. Thanks for taking the time to chat with the Fisher Cats pregame show, and best of luck to you guys throughout the entire Blue Jays organization as the season wraps up.
You got it, man. Thank you for having me.
We'll be back in a moment on the Fisher Cats pregame show. Starting lineups, first pitch just around the corner.